So there's a lot of advantages to movie theaters, but there's also some disadvantages. And one of the challenges or disadvantages of a movie theater is the children's space isn't ideal. Normally you rent a second or third or fourth screen or auditorium, and then in the front, down in the front, you put some fencing and some mats down, and that's where you do your nursery and you do your preschool. Elementary obviously can sit in the seats, and you can use the screen for the elementary kids. But I've seen churches do a great job, but it's not ideal. Another challenge for movie theaters is they're often very, very dark. And there's really two settings for the lights in a movie theater. There's the very low setting that they have when you normally walk into a theater. And then most theaters have cleaning lights, and you can turn on the fluorescent lights. The problem is the fluorescent lights are bright and they're harsh, and so it's hard to find that balance. Normally you have to bring in extra lighting to kind of lighten it up a little bit. Another challenge of movie theaters, similar to schools, is they can be really dirty. I watched in one theater the way that the theater worker would clean is they would take a leaf blower and they would start at the back of the theater and they would just go forward blowing all the garbage toward the front row. And then when they got to the front row, rather than sweeping it all up, they just lifted up the curtain and swept it under the curtain. Maybe your theater's not quite that dirty, but you'll often find spilled Coke and gummy bears stuck on the floor and leftover popcorn, and so you have to do some cleaning. The atmosphere in the theater can be challenging too. It's not conducive for participatory worship, because you come into a theater to sit, to watch a movie, to not talk, to get up and walk out. And if your church is one that has a more participatory style worship, the sound in the theater is actually kind of deadened for the theater sound, and so you have to kind of figure out how to overcome that. Also in a theater, you're competing with movies. It used to be that you could rent the theater before movies started, but now the movies tend to start 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock at the same time, prime time for church services. So you never know what movies will be running at the same time. And even if the movies aren't running at the same time, they'll often have on the marquee above the theater that you're going into what movie will be playing there. I'll never forget the weekend we walked in to our children's theater, and there on the marquee was playing 50 Shades of Grey. That's not really a great message for your parents. Now, I want to be careful here and just kind of take a pause and say, with schools, I gave some advantages and disadvantages, but I think schools can be very effective for a church. For theaters, I've given advantages and disadvantages, but I also think theaters could be effective for a church. In fact, I think that the main advantage schools have over theaters is probably it's easier to transform classrooms into bright and exciting and fun children's space than it is to transform movie theaters, but it definitely can be done. So let's keep going. Let's look at some other possibilities of places that you could have a church. Before we do that, let me give you some tips and tricks that I've come across through many years of doing church in a theater, because a lot of churches use theaters. One is you might be able to use their projectors. Probably not the projector they use for their main movie, but many times they'll have a secondary projection system, and you might be able to use that. That's awesome, because their projectors will fill the entire screen. One thing you need to know going in, when I first started this, I thought, maybe we can use their sound system, because their sound systems are amazing, surround sound, incredible subwoofers. They're designed for movie sound, not for live sound. And so your band can't play through their sound system. It's just not designed to handle that. So you will have to bring in your own sound system. Here's a little trick we discovered. Many times there is storage space behind the screen. So if you look at a movie, next time you go into a theater, look at the screen, there's a curtain underneath the screen. Go down at the end of the movie and lift up the curtain, and you'll see there's space back there. Sometimes they've filled it with speakers, but often it's empty. And if you have a good relationship with the manager of the theater, they will often let you store some of your equipment behind the screen. I talked to a church that just launched a new campus in a theater. I had told them about that trick before. They went to the manager. The manager actually let them bring in shelves to put behind the screens and store some of their equipment. And that can be very, very helpful. Remember, you have not because you ask not. Now, in theaters and in schools, here's another tip. Your best friend is that assistant manager or that janitor that opens the school for you or opens the theater for you, takes care of you, and locks up when you're done. It's not the manager of the theater. It's not the superintendent. It's not the principal. While you want to take care of those people, the people who make or break your experience in the theater, again, are those people who show up at 6, 7 in the morning, open it up for you. I have had multiple calls in the past from my campus pastor saying, hey, the assistant manager's not here. There's no one to unlock the theater. I can't get a hold of them. What am I going to do? That's a tough call. And so you want to make friends with, take care of those janitors and those managers. I've also heard incredible stories of those people starting to come to the church and giving their life to Christ. So it's a great mission field right in that space that you're in.